Emma's evening started like any other, quiet and routine. But a sudden knock on the door of her mind announced that tonight would not be ordinary. She had married Mark 2 years ago, and with him came his son Ethan, at 19. Ethan was grown enough to feel independent, yet still young enough to be fragile in his emotions. Emma had always tried to bridge the gap between them, offering small gestures of kindness, a listening ear, and careful attention to boundaries. But tonight, everything shifted. Ethan returned home after basketball practice, slight limp in his step that immediately set Emma on alert. "Ethan, what happened?" she asked, concern sharp in her voice. He brushed it off casually at first, claiming it was nothing, but his wincing movements betrayed him. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness along his back, the way he avoided putting weight on his left leg. Mark was away on a work trip, and Emma realized that, for once, she was the only one who could help. Emma had experience. She had once worked with athletes, helping with tension, stiffness, and sore muscles. Offering a massage seemed natural, professional, and caring. Ethan hesitated, unsure, and Emma noticed the uncertainty in his eyes. There was a pause, a moment of silent weighing, and then, with a quiet nod, he agreed. Emma guided him to the couch, keeping her touch gentle but firm, pressing along the tense muscles that had built up during hours of practice. The massage began in silence, the room filled only with the soft ticking of a wall clock and the subtle creak of the couch. Emma concentrated on easing the knots, trying to sense not only the physical tension but the unspoken stress she knew teenagers often carried. Ethan's posture slowly loosened, his breathing becoming steadier. But there was an edge to his voice when he finally spoke. "Emma, can I ask something? Something personal?" Emma froze, her hands pausing mid-motion. The air shifted. She could feel the weight in his words, heavy yet hesitant, as if he were tiptoeing on the edge of a confession he wasn't sure he could make. Her heart beat a little faster, not in alarm, but in that quiet recognition that something important was about to unfold. "What is it?" she asked softly, leaning slightly forward. She kept her tone careful, inviting him to speak without pressure. She didn't want him to retreat. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper at first, tremulous, and it carried a raw honesty that caught Emma by surprise. "Can you stop pretending everything is fine between us?" The words landed like a soft, sudden weight in the room. Emma's hands stilled completely. She hadn't expected that. She had assumed the distance between them was mutual, a natural space that needed time and patience. But now she realized the truth. Ethan had been carrying a quiet frustration, a longing for connection, and his voice had finally broken through his restraint. Emma's mind raced, trying to respond, trying to understand. His request was not for a physical thing, nor for an action that could be measured or corrected. It was a request for honesty, for emotional closeness, for recognition of feelings that had been carefully tucked away. She realized he wasn't blaming her, nor was he accusing. He was simply asking for what every human heart wants: acknowledgement and understanding. I don't want to feel like a guest in my own home anymore," Ethan added, his voice shaky. The words were soft, almost fragile, but they carried a truth Emma could not ignore. In that moment, the space between them felt charged, as if the air itself had turned thick with the weight of unsaid thoughts. She could see his nervous hands fidgeting, his eyes searching hers for a sign that she would respond not with judgment, but with openness. Emma felt a tightness in her chest, a mix of guilt and empathy. She had been careful, yes, perhaps overly careful, afraid of pushing him, afraid of making mistakes, afraid of overstepping in a space that was not fully hers to occupy. But now she understood that her caution had created walls, invisible but firm, that had kept him at a distance. She realized she could not hide behind politeness or fear any longer. Before she could speak, Ethan added something else, a quiet plea that hung in the air like a fragile thread. "Can you just stay? Not walk away when things get heavy." Emma felt a surge of warmth and determination. She knew in that moment that the night was not just about easing a sore back. It was about connection, trust. and the beginning of a bridge between two hearts that had been circling each other with care and caution. The evening, quiet at first, had turned into a turning point, one that would mark the start of a deeper, more honest bond between them. And with that, Emma realized that sometimes the hardest requests are not for actions, but for presence, understanding, and the courage to face feelings head on. Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Ethan's words from the living room still lingered in her mind. Stop pretending everything is fine between us. Simple, yet heavy. She realized that all this time, her efforts to be careful, respectful, and kind had unintentionally built walls between them. She looked at him now, sitting tensely on the couch, eyes fixed on the floor, and felt a wave of guilt mixed with understanding. "I don't want to push you," she began, her voice soft but steady, "and I never wanted to make you feel unwelcome." Ethan finally lifted his gaze. His dark eyes reflected a storm of frustration, sadness, and longing. He wasn't angry, he was tired. Tired of feeling unseen, of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. He leaned forward slightly, as if inviting her to cross the invisible line between caution and connection. "I know you care, Emma," he said, voice quivering slightly. "But it's hard sometimes. I see you trying to be close, but it feels distant, like you're holding back. I don't want that. I want real honesty." Emma's chest tightened. She hadn't realized how much her fear of overstepping had affected him. She had been so careful about respecting his space, about not replacing his mother, about not doing anything that might scare him away, that she had ended up creating distance. All the small gestures, the smiles, the patience, had been softened too much. He hadn't felt her heart in them. She reached out instinctively, placing a hand on his shoulder. The gesture was simple, but it carried warmth, reassurance, and sincerity. Ethan flinched at first, but then relaxed slightly, leaning into the comfort she offered. The physical connection was minor, but the emotional impact was significant. "I've been afraid," she admitted, her voice trembling a little, "afraid I'd replace someone you love. Afraid I'd fail you, afraid I wouldn't belong here. But I see now that my fear kept me from really being with you." Ethan's expression softened. He had not expected this level of honesty. He had been prepared for lectures, for polite reassurances, or for deflection. Instead, Emma had shared her true feelings, showing vulnerability that matched his own. "I never wanted to push you away," he said quietly, "but I needed to say it. I needed you to know that I feel alone sometimes, even with people around me. I wanted to feel like I could trust someone here, really trust." Emma nodded, her heart pounding. She realized that his request wasn't about control or obligation. It wasn't even about her personally. It was about connection, about needing someone to show up fully, without fear, without hesitation. That was the thing he had asked all along. Presence, honesty, and care without limits. "I'm here, Ethan," she whispered. "I'll stay. I won't walk away. I'll be here when it's hard, when it's messy, when it feels uncomfortable. I'm here for you. You don't have to carry things alone." Ethan's shoulders relaxed more than she expected. His tense jaw softened, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, she saw a flicker of relief in his eyes. He wasn't crying, not yet, but the tightness in his chest seemed to ease. She realized that sometimes words alone weren't enough. Presence and vulnerability were what healed unseen wounds. He shifted slightly, looking at her now with a quiet curiosity. "You mean? You'll really stay, even if I act stubborn or push you away?" Emma smiled gently, a mix of warmth and reassurance. "Even then, I'll stay. We'll figure this out together." The room felt lighter. The tension that had existed for months seemed to dissipate, replaced by a fragile but real bridge between them. It was not perfect. They still had walls to break down, fears to face, and old habits to unlearn. But the first step was taken. They had acknowledged the truth of their feelings, spoken openly, and committed to being there for each other. Ethan leaned back slightly, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He still carried some hesitance, but now there was hope. Emma felt a similar relief. The evening had started with a simple massage to ease physical tension, but it had transformed into a deeper emotional connection. She realized that sometimes care was not measured by actions alone, but by the courage to speak honestly and be present fully. Just as the quiet settled in, Ethan spoke again almost as an afterthought, but with a weight that made Emma pause. Can we really start over? Not like before, but new, honest, real. Emma's heart swelled. She nodded, knowing that this was the turning point, the moment when trust began to replace fear. The night had shifted. What started as a simple act of care had turned into a profound understanding. And for the first time, they both sensed the possibility of a real connection, one that could grow, heal, and become something lasting. Emma felt a shift inside her. The moment had come when words were no longer enough. She looked at Ethan, sitting tensely on the couch, and realized that all the carefulness, the politeness, the boundaries she had maintained for so long had only kept them apart. Now, there was no room for hesitation. She had to speak from the heart. "Ethan," she said softly, "I've been afraid. Afraid of overstepping, afraid of replacing someone you love, afraid that I might not be enough. I see now that my fear kept me from really being here with you." Ethan looked up, surprised, his eyes reflecting a mix of relief and uncertainty. He hadn't expected this honesty. He had been ready for polite reassurance, for carefully chosen words, but not for truth laid bare. He shifted slightly, the tension in his body softening, as if he were finally ready to receive what he had wanted all along. Acknowledgement. "I know you've tried," Ethan said quietly, "and I appreciate it. But sometimes it felt like you were holding back, like you were afraid to be close. I didn't know how to tell you that I wanted more than that. I just wanted someone to see me, really see me." Emma's chest tightened. She felt a pang of regret for all the moments she might have missed, all the time she had held back to avoid mistakes. She realized that Ethan's words weren't a complaint. They were a call for connection. A silent plea that she now had the chance to answer. She placed a hand gently on his shoulder. It was a small gesture, but it carried warmth and sincerity. Ethan flinched at first, unsure, but then relaxed slightly. There was nothing inappropriate in the gesture, just human comfort, the kind that bridges gaps and eases fear. Emma felt the weight of responsibility mixed with relief. She had the chance to show him that presence mattered more than perfection. "I'm here, Ethan," she said, voice firm but gentle. "I won't walk away. I won't leave when things feel difficult or messy. I'll be here and I'll face it with you." Ethan's shoulders sagged, the tightness of the past months beginning to ease. He had been carrying a lot alone, trying to manage feelings he didn't know how to express. Emma's words, her presence, and her honesty broke through that quiet barrier. It wasn't a magical fix, but it was a start, the beginning of trust, of real connection. I didn't want to feel alone anymore," Ethan admitted, his voice soft. "Sometimes I feel like I'm on my own, even with people around. I wanted to feel like I could depend on someone, that I could trust you." Emma nodded, understanding perfectly. "You can trust me. I'll stay even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's hard. You don't have to carry this alone anymore." There was a pause. They sat together, letting the weight of their words sink in. Emma noticed a small smile forming on Ethan's lips. It was tentative, fragile, but real. She realized that sometimes connection required bravery, not in grand gestures, but in small truths shared with courage and care. Then Ethan spoke again, quieter this time, almost shyly. "Can we start over? Not like before, but real this time." Honest without pretending. Emma's heart swelled. She nodded, the warmth spreading through her chest. "Yes, we can start over," she said softly. "We'll figure it out together. No pretending, no fear, just honesty." The air in the room changed. What had started as a simple massage to relieve physical pain had transformed into a moment of emotional clarity. Walls that had existed for months, built from caution and misunderstanding, began to crumble. Both of them realized that healing wasn't about perfection, it was about showing up, speaking truth, and being willing to be vulnerable. Emma felt a rare peace. She had feared the distance, but now she saw that connection was possible if they met each other halfway, with honesty and patience. Ethan, for his part, felt relief wash over him. He had carried feelings he didn't know how to express, but now he felt seen, heard, and understood. Just when the room felt calm, when the tension seemed fully replaced by quiet understanding, a sound broke the moment. The front door opened. Mark had returned early from his trip. The unexpected sound made both Emma and Ethan tense. Mark stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. He saw Emma and Ethan sitting together, close but not awkwardly so, hands resting lightly. Conversation paused mid-thought. He raised an eyebrow, clearly noticing the closeness, the comfort, the silent understanding between them. Emma felt her pulse quicken. She realized the moment of honesty, of connection, would now be witnessed. She didn't feel guilty there. Was nothing inappropriate, but she knew that the next conversation would require care. How would Mark understand what had happened? Could he see the trust and bond forming without misunderstanding it? Ethan shifted nervously, sensing the change. His calm expression had cracked slightly, replaced by a hint of concern. Emma put a hand gently on his arm, silently reassuring him. Whatever came next, they had faced the hardest step already. They had spoken truth, shared their fears, and begun to trust. The night had transformed completely. What began as a simple massage had become the start of real emotional connection. And now, with Mark standing at the door, everything was about to face a new test, one that would challenge their honesty, patience, and willingness to embrace change. Mark's unexpected return froze the room. Emma and Ethan exchanged a quick glance. The trust they had just built now weighed down by the uncertainty of his reaction. Mark's eyes scanned them carefully, noting the closeness, the unspoken conversation lingering in the space between them. His face wasn't angry, but it carried a mixture of concern and curiosity. The kind of expression a father wears when he senses something important is unfolding. Emma took a deep breath. She had faced the hardest step already, honesty with Ethan, but now she had to include Mark. "We need to talk," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in her chest. Ethan nodded beside her, the tension in his shoulders making him seem smaller, yet braver for sitting through this moment. All three sat together in the living room, the soft hum of the evening settling around them like a quiet blanket. Emma spoke, first, choosing words carefully but truthfully. She told Mark about the conversation with Ethan, about his frustration, his longing for connection, and the fear both of them had carried. She explained how Ethan had asked her to stop pretending, to truly be present, and how she had responded with honesty and commitment. Mark listened quietly. His eyes softened as he took in every word. He could see the sincerity in Emma's expression, the care she had shown, and the courage it had taken for both her and Ethan to be so open. There was no shame, no hidden motives, only honesty and a desire to connect as a family. Ethan, encouraged by Emma's.com, spoke next. "Dad, I'm not a kid anymore, but I still need support. Sometimes I feel alone even when I'm with people. I know you and Mom. I know Emma has tried, but I didn't know how to say it. I needed her to just be here. And she was. She stayed." Mark's eyes flicked between them, absorbing every word. His hand instinctively went to Ethan's shoulder, giving a gentle squeeze. He nodded slowly, his voice calm but firm. "I'm glad you told me, both of you. This honesty, it matters. I can see now that you needed this. Emma, you didn't replace anyone. You became someone he can depend on." Emma felt a relief wash over her. The weight of fear, that nagging concern about being misunderstood, finally lifted. She had worried that her closeness with Ethan might appear inappropriate, but Mark's understanding smile reassured her. This was not about anything romantic or forbidden. It was about trust, care, and family connection. Ethan, feeling the tension ease, let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Kiwi, start over. Really start over? Not pretending. Not avoiding anything, just being real. His voice was soft but hopeful, and Emma saw the vulnerability that had guided every step of their conversation. Mark nodded, his eyes reflecting pride and warmth. Yes, we start over, together, no pretending. We face things honestly, support each other, and grow as a family. Emma reached out and placed her hand lightly on Ethan's. It was a gesture of solidarity, reassurance, and human warmth. Simple and safe. Ethan squeezed her hand back briefly, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they had rebuilt. There were no grand gestures, no unnecessary drama, just the steady comfort of mutual understanding. The room, once heavy with tension and uncertainty, now felt lighter. A fragile sense of peace had settled over them, the kind that comes after. Honesty and trust had been laid bare. Emma realized that the night had transformed completely. What began as a simple massage to ease physical tension had become a turning point. A moment where fear and caution gave way to openness and connection. Mark's voice broke the silence. I know it won't be perfect immediately. There will be hard moments, missteps, and misunderstandings. But honesty like this changes everything. It builds trust and allows us to truly be a family. Ethan nodded, absorbing the meaning behind the words. For the first time, he felt fully understood. Not just tolerated or guided, but genuinely seen. Emma's heart swelled, knowing that the effort, the fear, and the patience had all led to this moment. They sat together quietly, the unspoken tension finally released. Each of them understood their role not as perfect parents or children, but as people committed to showing up, to listening, and to supporting one another. The night had started with a simple act of care, a massage, but it ended with something far more.